I actually get to review this book for my job, and that is awesome. It is something of a coffee table book and a history book in a lot of ways that shows the history of video games and its importance through 64 objects and throughout the time of video games' existence, starting with the dawn of one of the very first pinball machines that wasn't necessarily for gambling, all the way to Pokemon Go, or games such as That Dragon Cancer, which I still have not played. But then, of course, along the way, it has pretty much anything from the Odyssey, Commodore 64 to E.T. for the Atari. And it just demonstrates where video games have started, where they're going, and how this book kind of displays and thinks that it's going to be the most important medium of the 21st century, as movies and television were in the 20th century, and then how literature was in the 19th century. I don't know if this is really the first of its kind, but this is one of the first books that I'm aware of that is actually doing this. And it's super cool because it was produced right here, or at least written right here in Rochester, New York, where I currently live. A couple of videos ago, that doesn't make sense. A few weeks ago, I made a video about the Video Game World Hall of Fame, which is a whole thing throughout the nation and through the world. And that Hall of Fame exists here in Rochester at the Strong Museum of Play. And that is where this book is produced from. So anyways, I'm so excited that it's mine and I get to review it. But after all, I am at work as I film this, and there's a lot to do, including reading this book. So, the reality is, when I'm not playing video games, I'm reading about video games. As I pursue this endeavor and acknowledging that video games are more than a hobby but a lifestyle for me, I'm trying to read as much as I possibly can, to learn as much as I can from all different viewpoints and other scholars or whatever you want to call them. So this is just the first of a bunch of books that I've been reading recently. Okay, let me show you. Hey, so these are the books that I've been reading or have read recently to kind of get myself up to speed and see some different viewpoints of a medium that is clearly very important to me. I'm gonna start with this one because not only do I love this book, but this was the first of these books that I read, and I actually reviewed this book on my channel. I'll put a video link to that in the description below. I think this book is fantastic. It is essentially a series of retrospectives done by Tom Bissell, and why and how video games have kind of correlated with certain situations or bigger ideas in his life. One thing that I want to note is that Tom Bissell, the writer of this book, went on to write Gears of War, or at least the fourth game, and I think he wrote Gears of War Judgment, and I think he might have helped with Gears of War 3. Nonetheless, he went on from writing retrospectives about games to actually writing video games. The next one up is Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Schreier, who is I believe the senior news editor of the website Kotaku. Now this book differs tremendously from Extra Lives, because Extra Lives is more of a personal, introspective, retrospective, God, I'm a mess today, as to how video games directly affected Bissell's life. Where in this case, this is a much more news-oriented, news reporter-oriented research book. It's a series of stories based on the living hell that is game development, especially for very specific games like Uncharted 4 to Dragon Age Inquisition, Halo Wars, Shovel Knight is a fascinating chapter. And he essentially goes to all of these studios and interviews and documents these developers, what it's actually really like to develop a game. And this does not paint it in a wonderful image. However, I do think this game is an absolute necessary in reading material for those who are game developers or aspire to be them. In fact, I would go so far to say this should be required reading in classrooms in all schools that are teaching game design, because this shows the very harsh reality of what it's like to work for this industry. Then next up we have Crash Overdrive by Zoe Quinn. Now admittedly, I have not gotten through this book yet. I was about a small portion through it until this got handed off to me, and because I'm reviewing this for the paper and I'm on a deadline, I had to switch and read this instead. So if you don't know what this whole thing is about, this basically what happened is Zoe Quinn was the root of a cultural explosion, war explosion that happened between people of the internet, journalists, and other big names in the industry. And essentially, if you don't know, created what is now known as Gamergate, a hashtag and movement of basically very cyberbullying and death threats and all this jibber jabber. And one of the reasons why this book, I'm really eager to read this book, and this whole era is really important to me, is because the week that all happened was the first week I started writing for Indie Game Magazine. So not only was I still kind of not in the community, but I was kind of thrusted in, and journalists at this time were a target due to this whole thing. That was a trial by fire for me, kind of entering this territory and not really knowing what was going on, and then being the subject of some harassment myself. I'm very eager to read this and finish this and kind of get a different perspective from it. This dude. So of course I've already talked about this thing. I don't want to get too much into it because I'm reviewing it, and I don't want to reveal everything that I think about it, especially because I'm not done with it. But I will say thus far, I was quite intimidated by it, and just looking through it, I was afraid it was going to be like reading a textbook, but admittedly so, this reads very well and very quickly so far, and it has been extremely informative. Also, I've never reviewed a book before, like not like a written review of a book before, so that's an exciting challenge for me. Anyways, that's what I got for this week. Books are important in my life, so therefore I'm talking about them. I know I just kind of did a video on a book a few weeks ago, but this is what I'm doing. But this just brings up a really good thing, and for me, and I think to remind other people that your loves and interests, especially when it comes to video games and other things, go far beyond the lore of that license or franchise that you love, and that if you really love something, I think it's worth taking the time to dive behind the curtains and know a little bit more about it. But that's at least what I think, and at least what I'm striving for as I try to indulge myself more as much as I can into this industry to the nth degree. With that said, that's all I got. That's all I have to say today. I have reading to do and a ton of work to get done, so I want to get back to that. Thank you so much for watching. As always, it means the world to me. I hope you have a wonderful day. Again, I'm Kurt Indovina. Till next time, bye.